Quickly, before we get into this video, it would mean a lot if you hit that subscribe button. We're getting so close to 1,000 subs, and I'd really appreciate it. But anyways, let's get on to the video. What's up, boys? We are back for my breakdown and reaction to UFC 299, and it was a very good card. This is actually the first card all year I've been able to watch from start to finish, and it was an amazing card. So many great fights on it, and even some of the lackluster fights had their moments. And for the first time ever, I went perfect on my predictions. I went 7 for 7 on the fights I actually broke down in my prediction video, and then I went 14 for 14 in total. I got every single fight on the card right, which I've never done before. But let's start with that main event. Sean O'Malley successfully defends his belt, defeating Marlon Vera by a unanimous decision, 50-45, if not worse. You can argue there should have been some 10-8 rounds in there. And Cheeto really just didn't do too much. He pretty much did nothing the first 3 rounds, started to pick it up in the 4th and the 5th, but at that point it was way too late, and he still lost those rounds. He just let Sean sort of sit on the outside and just kick at him, punch at him, use his footwork, move around. There was no cutting off the cage from Cheeto. He really had to get on the inside of the longer fighter if he wanted to have any success, and he did sometimes, and he did land some good shots. He landed a really good left hook to the body at the end of the fight that really hurt Sean. Clearly, you could tell it affected him. He landed a few other good shots as well, but this was pretty much just a Sean domination. Cheeto did nothing the first 3 rounds. That has always been one of his biggest weaknesses. He always starts so slow. He started slow. Even in the fight, some of the fights he's won, he starts slow, like against Dominic Cruz and Rob Font. But you really saw in the Corey Sandhagen fight how Cheeto's just lack of output, lack of activity really affected him, and Corey just dominated him, and Sean did a very similar thing here. He just put volume on Cheeto, and he was so much faster, so much better on the feet that Cheeto just couldn't work to the inside and was more than content to sit on the outside. He tried to land some leg kicks, but Sean's leg kicking defense has continuously improved. You saw the improvement between the first Cheeto fight and the Pedro Munhoz fight, and then there was an even bigger improvement between the Pedro Munhoz fight and this fight. His leg kicking defense is no longer a weakness of his. Early on, Sean was really investing in the body shots. He was targeting the body, and he was doing that for a few different reasons. The first was because Cheeto's head defense, his head striking defense, is very good. He has a very good guard. He's very good at parrying shots, and he likes to shell up a lot, which makes it really hard to hit him in the head and hit him clean in the head, but it opens up the body. And so Sean was just landing body kicks, landing right hands to the body, left hooks. As well as Sean lands more of those body shots, it will open up the head because Cheeto will begin to drop his hands to try and defend the body, and it did in this fight. As the fight wore on, as Sean landed more shots to the body, Cheeto's hands began to fall, and it became easier for Sean to land to the head. And once he started landing, he landed pretty much everything. Head kicks, spinning back kicks, body kicks, leg kicks, right crosses, jabs. He was just landing everything. Cheeto was basically a punching bag for Sean. Sean even hurt Cheeto a couple times. That one knee he landed was disgusting. I don't know how Cheeto took that. He also landed a very good right hand that hurt Cheeto, I think in the 5th round. But yeah, I don't know how Cheeto took that knee. Cheeto has one of the best chins in the bantamweight division. It shows how powerful Sean is because Cheeto is rarely hurt like that. He got dropped. I don't know if Cheeto's ever even been dropped. And we've seen Sean put so many people away with one punch. So credit to Cheeto's chin for being able to take that. So great performance from Sean. I thought this would be a very competitive fight, especially later on. I thought Sean would win the early rounds and Cheeto would win the later rounds, but nope, Sean just ran away with all of the rounds. That was by far the best version of Sean I've ever seen, and he just continues to get better in every single aspect. And his cardio really impressed me because he went 5 rounds, not easily. He was definitely gassed at the end, but he was still keeping up good output. So what's next for both of these guys? Sean did call out Ilya after the fight, saying he wants to move up to 145, go for double champ status, but I think we all know that fight doesn't make much sense, especially since Merab and Corey are right there for title shots in bantamweight, and there's a lot of contenders at featherweight that deserve it over O'Malley. So the fight that makes the most sense is definitely Merab. This guy's been deserving of a title shot for a long time, and I think it's a more competitive fight than a lot of people think, but that should absolutely be next. As for Cheeto, there's a lot of different fights you could put on. You could do the winner of Davison Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt. I think that makes a lot of sense. You could do Umar potentially, maybe Jonathan Martinez. I think all those fights make sense. And then we go to Dustin Poirier knocking out Benoit Saint-Denis in the 2nd round. This fight was amazing. So action-packed, such a high pace. There was a lot of everything. There was some fun grappling, some fun striking, lots of power punches, technique. There was a bit of everything. And both guys looked pretty good here. Dustin's chin looked amazing. I don't think that Justin Gaethje head kick affected his chin at all because he was taking some clean shots from Benoit. Benoit was having a lot of success in the wrestling and grappling. He was putting on such a high grappling pace on Dustin. It was pretty clear he was trying to finish Dustin early before the later rounds. And he was able to take Dustin down pretty much at will, and that's for a few things. One, because Benoit is so physically strong and imposing, and 2, because Dustin wasn't really trying to defend the takedowns. He kept pulling that guillotine. He pulled it 3 or 4 4 times, and it's very hard to get guillotines on your opponents. Guillotines only work if your opponents believe in them. I heard someone say that. I thought it was funny. But at this level, it's so hard to complete a guillotine on someone, and Dustin kept pulling it instead of smartly getting to the underhooks and defending the takedown. His corner even told him, hey, stop pulling the guillotine, and he still went for it. And after the fight, he says, I ain't ever gonna stop. But on the ground, Dustin did get put in some bad positions. Benoit had his back at one point, I believe, and Dustin is very good on the ground, very underrated grappler, and he was able to work up from the bottom a lot against a guy who has very good top pressure, very good control, good ground and pound. And then on the feet, Benoit is fast, he's powerful. He was landing on Dustin with some good shots, but Dustin is so much more technical. Benoit just doesn't move his head, especially in the pocket. This is a similar problem he's had in a lot of his past fights, and it's actually the reason I picked Matt Frivola over him a few months back, because Benoit is just so wild in the pocket, which makes it so easy for Dustin to pick out his counters, and Dustin was landing very well. He was also using good head movement to avoid the shots coming back at him. Dustin's boxing is so slick. He was finding openings. He landed that check right hook that put Benoit down and then finished him. Great performance from Dustin. Even though it only lasted a round and a half, there's so much to take in from this fight. I'm probably gonna have to do a breakdown video on this either today or tomorrow, but great performance from Dustin. Benoit looked good, and I saw him complaining on Twitter after that infection he had affected him. I don't think it really changed the outcome, but he's still very young. He's only been training MMA for 6 years. He has so much potential. He's going to be at the top of the division one day, if not potentially a champion. But as for what's next for Dustin, I think a fight with Gamrot makes a ton of sense. I know they're friends, I think, and they train together, so they might refuse to fight each other, but the winner of that fight would probably get a title shot. But if they refuse to fight each other, maybe you do the loser of Charles and Armin. As for BSD, I think a fight with Fiziev or put that Dariush fight together makes the most sense. They're both coming off losses. Beneil's coming off 2 losses, actually. He's number 7 in the rankings. Benoit's number 12. So I think that fight makes the most sense. Next, we go to Michael Venom Page winning a unanimous decision over Kevin Holland, and he made it look pretty easy. Kevin Holland had a few good moments. He landed a few good leg kicks. He did have that rear naked choke in the second round that I thought for a second he was going to get. MVP's never been great on the ground, and Kevin Holland exposed that. And Holland actually did use some wrestling here, did actually attempt takedowns, stayed in the clinch, got him down once, was able to control MVP for a bit, landed some good ground and pound. But overall, it was a pretty standard MVP fight, a lot of clinching. Now, the great thing about MVP style is it makes for great highlights. It's very explosive. He'll explode into range very quick, try and land that right hand, but if that right hand doesn't land, he overcrowds himself and they clinch up. And that's why there was so much clinching in this fight, why there's been a lot of clinching in MVP's whole career, because he explodes in so fast that he just overcrowds himself. But Kevin Holland really didn't have much for him. MVP was so much faster than him. I'm pretty sure Kevin Holland said in his corner he's a lot faster than we thought. MVP landed some good shots, landed a few good leg kicks, and was throwing those wide overhand rights that were landing on Kevin Holland. Holland was able to roll with some of them, but a lot of them were landing clean, and Kevin Holland's chin did look pretty good, because most guys would not have been able to take the shots that Kevin Holland was taking. But MVP just ran around the cage, used his footwork advantage, and Kevin Holland just couldn't cut him off. There were times where MVP would be stuck against the fence, and Kevin Holland would not be able to cut him off. He'd just circle back to the center. And what about that walkout? That was one of the better walkouts I've seen in MMA. I wish Dana would allow fighters to have more personality in their walkouts. Dana even said in the post-fight interview, we're not going to do stuff like this again, which I don't understand why. It's fun for the fighters. It's fun for the fans. That was one of the best walkouts I've seen in a while, but great performance from MVP. I've wanted this guy in the UFC for so long, and now that he's here, there's so many great fights you can make. Now, I don't think he's going to be a champion, especially in a division that's full of guys who will be able to take him down and control him. Welterweight has some of the best wrestlers and grapplers in the UFC, and that is his biggest weakness. He even said he's got to work on that. But what's next for him? It's the Wonderboy fight. That is one of the best fights you can put on in all of MMA. I've wanted that fight for so long. And as for Kevin Holland, he's probably not going to be ranked anymore, so he's probably going to have to fight someone outside of the top 15. And then we go to Jack Della Maddalena knocking out Gilbert Burns in the 3rd round with an intercepting knee. He intercepted the takedown of Burns with a knee. Perfect timing. Really hurt Burns, and then got on top and landed a bunch of ground and pound. I gotta point it out, it was absolutely a late stoppage. It should have been only 3 or 4 shots, and then the ref should have stopped it, but he let it go on for way too long. Well, this was an interesting fight. Jack Della was having a lot of success on the feet. He was putting together good combinations, whereas Burns was more of a singular shot fighter. He was throwing one shot and then moving away. Overhand right circle, and he actually did land an overhand right on JDM's chin, so credit to JDM's chin for being able to take a shot like that. But Burns was having a lot of success with his wrestling. He was able to take down JDM pretty easily. JDM's takedown defense did not look nearly as good as I thought it would, but what looked really good was JDM's grappling defense. He was able to scramble out of positions. Gilbert got his back at times. Gilbert was getting good positions on the ground. round, and Gilbert has ridiculous control, amazing jiu-jitsu, and JDM was able to escape, work his way up from the bottom, scramble out. Right before he landed that knee, he was able to scramble out, escape from the bottom, get up, and then as Gilbert went to re-engage with a double leg, he timed that knee perfectly. And he was down 2-0 going into that third round. I think one of the judges actually had it even, but the other two had it 2-0. I had it 2-0 for Burns as well. He knew he needed to finish. His corner told him that. And so he came out very aggressive, was cutting off the cage a lot better. Early on, especially in that first round, JDM was really struggling cutting off the movement of Gilbert Burns. But then in that third round, he was able to cut off the cage. He was landing some good shots, pressuring Gilbert, putting more volume on him, and then he did find that finish with that knee. That was a great shot from him. Beautiful timing. And then after the fight, he called out Shavkat. Who does that? No one's called out Shavkat before, but he did, and that fight makes a ton of sense. Bilal is obviously next in line for the title. He's the guy that should be fighting Leon. So in the meantime, you do have Shavkat and Jack Della, who are pretty neck and neck for a title shot, so you should put that fight together for the #1 contender spot. As for Gilbert Burns, he's coming off 2 losses. There are only really 2 fights that make sense in my opinion: Sean Brady and Jeff Neal. I think the Sean Brady fight makes the most sense, so I think you do Brady versus Burns. And then we go to Petr Yan defeating Song Yadong by a unanimous decision. Did lose that first round, which he typically does, and both these guys actually fight in a very similar way, where they start kind of slow, like to figure out their opponent. They both have a similar style where they're boxers, but will mix in wrestling and kicks. But I would say Song did win that first round, landed a few good low kicks, and did get that takedown and landed some good ground and pound if I remember correctly. But then Yan came out and won the second and third. He was able to figure Song out, switched into southpaw, which took away that outside leg kick from Song, and started landing good body kicks. And then with his boxing, he would mix up the uppercuts and the left hooks to the head. His boxing looks so good here against a guy who is also a very good boxer, very explosive, has a good amount of power. And you just look at this fight momentum-wise, Song was coming off 2 good wins back-to-back where he just dominated his opponents, whereas Yan was coming off 3 losses and had lost 4 out of his last 5. So this was a big win for Yan here. He really needed this. And he looked pretty good here. Took that first round pretty slow, was throwing feints, throwing some stuff out there, seeing how Song would react. And then in the second and third round, he picked it up, found his counters, found his openings, was able to take down Song himself, got some good positions on Song on the ground, landed some good ground and pound, out-wrestled Song. He was just better everywhere. He landed like 3 good elbows as well, where he sort of threw him how Yair threw it against a Korean zombie that knocked him out. He's throwing them up. I don't know how Song took them. Song has a very good chin, and Song didn't look bad here, but Yan was just better everywhere. He outboxed him, he outkicked him, he out-wrestled him, and it was just overall an amazing performance from Yan and a much-needed win. As for what's next for Petr Yan, there's not really many fights that make too much sense. There is Cheeto and the winner of Davison Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt, which is probably what I would do. I would give him the winner of Figgy Cody. And then for Song, I would do him versus Umar or Jonathan Martinez. And then we go to Curtis Blaydes TKOing Jailton Almeida in the second round. This was a weird fight because Almeida dominated that first round in the wrestling. He was able to consistently take down Curtis Blaydes with ease. He was getting the body locks. He was tripping him out. He was getting double legs, single legs. He was just able to take him down with whatever he wanted. And Curtis Blaydes just couldn't break the grip of the body lock. So even though he was able to work his way up from the bottom, Almeida still had that body lock, was still able to take him down. But Almeida didn't really do too much with the takedowns. He was trying to get his back, but could never get both of his hooks in. Blaydes was able to work his way up a lot. He was just kind of standing up a lot of the times. It showed the size and strength difference between these two, because even though Almeida has bulked up a lot, Curtis Blaydes is still a much bigger heavyweight, a much stronger heavyweight. But the fact that he was able to take Curtis Blaydes down is very impressive. It means he can probably take down pretty much anyone in this division. And then the second round came out and Almeida decided to strike a little more, was trying to box with Blaydes, and then shot in this takedown. Now, whenever Almeida shoots in a takedown, I've noticed this in a lot of his past fights, the way he sets it up is he'll put his fist out in front of him and then open his hands and feint up and then dive for the double leg. That is pretty much his only setup. He does that in all of his fights, which makes him extremely predictable, which makes it a lot easier to see and defend the takedown. And Blaydes was able to sort of sprawl on it, get back up against the fence, and then as Almeida's holding on to that single leg, he sort of gets trapped there, and Blaydes just unloads ground and pound. And Almeida really couldn't do much. He couldn't go to the right because that's where Blaydes' leg was. He couldn't go to the left because that's where he's getting punched from. He couldn't go up because Blaydes said he was laying his belly on him. He couldn't rise into the clinch or anything. So really the only thing he could do is try and let go of the single leg and escape out, which would have got him caught, but it's better than what he did, which is just sit there and get pounded on with ground and pound, which eventually folded him and the fight was stopped. So a very weird fight. But as for what's next for both of these guys, I think you do, depending on what Jon Jones and Stipe are doing. Assuming Jon Jones and Stipe are going to fight and Jon is just going to vacate the title after, I think you do Curtis Blaydes versus Tom Aspinall for the interim belt. That fight makes the most sense to me. And then for Almeida, maybe Maybe you do him versus the winner of Tai Tuivasa, Marcin Tybura, or maybe you do him versus Alexander Volkov. And then we go to Maycee Barber defeating Katlyn Chookagian, or Katlyn Cerminara now, and I was definitely a fan of this fight. Everything is ugly in a Maycee Barber fight except for her. What a quote from Joe Rogan, by the way. But besides that, this wasn't the most entertaining fight. A lot of time in the clinch. Maycee Barber did out-grapple her a little. Katlyn Chookagian looked good on the feet at times. Maycee Barber looked kind of wild, but was landing. But Maycee Barber did win, and I guess you do her versus the loser of Blanchfield-Furo. Mateusz Gamrot got the unanimous decision over RDA, basically out-wrestled him. If this was prime RDA, he would have ran right through him, but RDA just couldn't keep up with the volume. He was starting to gas out. The wrestling pace Gamrot puts on his opponents is pretty exhausting at times. He was able to gas out Arman Tsarukyan, but yeah, he basically just out-wrestled him, out-grappled him on the ground. RDA is a very good grappler, very good at defending positions and submissions, but he just got controlled on the ground. And on the feet, Gamrot's striking did impress me. It looked a lot better than it has in past fights, but he did get dropped. RDA did land that big uppercut that really hurt him and was able to defend a lot of the takedowns early on, and I think RDA definitely won that first round, but he just couldn't keep up with the cardio. Gamrot's choice of takedowns was very weird too. DC kept pointing it out. He kept dropping down, and as RDA moved into him, and then would grab him and take him down, and RDA was able to get up from some of them, but when he did get up on the feet, besides landing that uppercut, he didn't do much. So decent performance from Gamrot, I guess. And now he's coming off 2 wins, one to RDA and one to Fiziev, and I think you do him versus Dustin Poirier. I think that makes the most sense, but if he refuses to fight Dustin, then I think you do him versus the loser of Charles Arman. And then we go to Kyler Phillips winning a unanimous decision over Pedro Munhoz. Basically just landed whatever he wanted, landed some good knees, some good kicks, some good jabs. Pedro's chin looked amazing. There were shots that landed from Phillips that really should have hurt him, but Pedro's always had a really good chin. He's always been very durable, but Pedro really didn't do too much. Kyler Phillips was constantly switching stances, which took away that leg kick from Pedro. He did land a few good shots of his own, but overall Kyler Phillips just put on an amazing performance against him. He'll be in the top 15 now, and I would like to see him against maybe Dominic Cruz or Rob Font. Makes the most sense to me. And now that Pedro lost, he might be out of the top 15 for the first time in a long time. Philipe Lins won a unanimous decision over Ion Cuțelaba. It was basically the story of the leg kicks. Lins just kept targeting that lead leg, and Cuțelaba just had no clue how to check him. Cuțelaba was landing some good punches up close, but Lins was basically able to keep him out of range with the leg kicks, and then as he started to gas out later in the fight, he switched to try and use more wrestling, using some clinch work, trying to take the fight down. And knowing he needed to finish, Cuțelaba did put the pressure on him, which did take away that leg kick, but it wasn't enough, and Lins won a decision, so good performance from him. And then we go to Michel Pereira submitting Michel Oleksiachuk, I think is how you say it, in the first round. 1 minute into it, Michel was so much faster. He came out, went straight to the body, landed a few good body kicks because they were in opposite stances. Those body kicks were so fast, they were so devastating, and then he landed a big right hand to the body on Michel that really hurt him, folded him, and then Pereira followed him up against the cage, landed some big knees to the body, was able to get his back, get that choke, sink it in, and submitted him in the first round, putting Michel to sleep. He didn't even tap, so great performance from Michel Pereira. He is so much better at middleweight than he is at welterweight. And then we go to the Cuban monster, Robelis Despaigne, knocking out Josh Parisian 18 seconds into the fight. And funny enough, that is the same amount of time as his last 3 fights. Listen to this. He knocked out Travis Gregory in 12 seconds. He knocked out Stevie Payne in 3 seconds. He knocked out Miles Banks in 4 seconds, and then he just knocked out Josh Parisian in 18 seconds. This guy, his last 4 fights have gone for 30 seconds. This guy is a monster. He came out, threw a kick, did slip to the ground, but then landed a few good hooks as Parisian was moving forward, put Parisian down, and then finished him with a few ground and pound shots. What did I watch? That was a crazy performance. Now, there are a lot of holes in his game, or a lot of unknowns about his game. I have gone back and watched all of his fights, and because he just knocks everyone out so quick, there's not a lot of film on him, but he does leave his chin exposed. He is very hittable. He likes to brawl. Parisian actually did catch him at one point, and we obviously don't know where his takedown defense is at. I don't think anyone's ever shot in a takedown on him. He just knocks them out before they can. But man, this guy is a monster. Now, as I said, he leaves his chin exposed. He doesn't move his head. He pretty much has no defense, and we don't know how he would fight a technical fight because he just goes out there, brawls, and tries to knock his opponents out really quick, which does work against lower level guys, but as he starts working his way into the rankings, he could get caught for that. So I'm curious to see how how he would be able to fight a technical kickboxing match, and I'm obviously curious to see how his wrestling defense looks, but there aren't many wrestlers in the heavyweight division, especially outside of the top 10. But amazing performance from him. He took 0 damage in this fight, so I think he should fight in 2 to 3 months. Give him another guy outside the top 15, someone a little better, test him a little more. He is supposedly 35, but I'm pretty sure he came from that Cuban athletic program, and they like to age up their guys so they can compete at a younger age. So who knows what his real age is, but let's just say he's 35. He's a bit older, so I think it would be smart to build him up quickly. So I say 3 months, give him another unranked guy, see how he does there, and then give him someone in the top 15. Azu Alimbayev defeats CJ Vergara. Pretty good performance from him, basically out-wrestled him, landed some good kicks as well. Now Vergara's takedown defense did look pretty good. He was able to defend a lot of the takedowns. He was switching stances, and in boxing range, he was landing good shots on Azu Alimbayev, but Alimbayev was just too much in the end. He did get some good positions and wasn't able to finish CJ Vergara, and as I said, Vergara's takedown defense looked pretty good, and his boxing looked pretty good. And then we go to Joanne Wood defeating Marina Moroz by a split decision. I thought she won. That spinning back fist she landed was nasty. This was one of the better fights on the card. They just went at it. Joanne Wood got the nod and then retired after. She had a very good career, fought some of the best there has ever been, and I wish her well for whatever she does next. And that was all the fights on the card. It was an amazing fight card, probably the best of the year, to be honest. There were some amazing fights. I'm probably going to do breakdown videos on the main and co-main, but that'll probably be out tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to film that today. I'm exhausted. Stupid daylight savings time. I just randomly looked at my clock and it said 3:30, and I was like, where did that hour go? They need to get rid of that as soon as possible. I'm about to just move out to the West Coast just so fights end earlier. But anyways, that's the end of the video. If you are new here and you did enjoy, please be sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications, like the video if you did enjoy, comment whatever you want down below. What was your favorite fight? And I'll see you guys in the next one.